Hi friends, it's Scott here. So we've all been there using galleries in Power Apps to create grids, but not really managing to make them exactly like a grid, and it becomes very difficult to maintain. Well, in this episode, I'm going to show you how you can use the details list in the Creator Kit to make this a whole lot easier. So stick around. So the Creator Kit's been released for quite some time now. I'm not going to go into how to install it because there's a whole load of resources out there, and I'm not going to show you all the different components because it's got a lot of great stuff in there. I'm specifically going to show you how to use the details list. And so if you come into the reference app that you get when you install the Creator Kit, you can come down here and you can see it's all the different components, but on the details list, we've got this really fancy component here called the details list, and there's a load of different functionality that you can do, from grids that look very much like the Fluent UI standard and you'd see in Office, to grids that have got sort of icons embedded in them, multi-line elements, expand, collapse, these kind of things with tags, etc. Now, one of the challenges about making Power Apps is when you're trying to show data that's tabular data. Now, galleries are great, especially on touch devices where you want to show a very small amount of data, and perhaps an image and some basic summary data, and then you select the chevron to kind of expand that record to allow you to edit it or view it. Fantastic for that. But when you're creating more complex apps where you've got large bits of data that are perhaps many different columns that you want to show, and especially referential data, so you want to select one master record and then show lots of different child records that relate to that, creating grids out of those galleries can become quite problematic, especially if you then need to add in columns to that, because obviously you can create a kind of grid structure using a gallery, but as soon as you want to insert another column, you've got to go and move all the other different controls inside that gallery around to accommodate. And that's where the details list comes in. Now, if you've used model-driven apps, you'll know that actually you can create grids like this very easily just using the metadata of the tables, and you can just add a view and you can add the columns in and move them around and change the width and change what sorting and what filtering is happening. So it's sort of built into that semantically driven, metadata driven, model driven apps. But in Canvas apps, it's a little bit more problematic because we start from, well, more or less a blank canvas. So I'm going to start with a very simple layout here, kind of using the responsive layout. And what we're going to do firstly is going to go and grab the Creator Kit Fluent details list. And it's once you've installed it, it will become available inside import components, and you select the code tab like that. So let's search for details list. There we go. And I'm going to insert that. And what that does is that gives us underneath code components this Fluent details list. And so I could just select this container and I can just pop that in, and it will give us the control. And let's just make that full width here so it expands to the width and also the height. So there we go. Now, what it's telling us at the moment is there's no columns defined because we haven't given it what data source we want to bind to. So I'm going to add in the accounts, but I'm also going to add in the contacts, because what we're going to show is we're going to show accounts and then the contacts that are associated with that. So there are the two data sources. So if I go and select this control here and select records, this items collection, this is the data source that we're going to bind to, okay? I'm going to say filter my accounts where the industry, like that, is not blank, okay? And so that will give us all of a subset of the accounts where there is an industry code selected, because as we see in a minute, we're going to show a column for that. Now, you can see it's still blank. Okay, it's still not giving us any records, even though this will actually return. If we do a drop down here, you can see here it's got a whole load of records in there. There they all are. So, and the reason being is, first, we've got to do a couple of steps here. Firstly is we've got to select the fields and then define the column layout. So if you've built a model-driven app, this is the equivalent of creating a view. And so we've already got the account name, etc. in here. But what we're going to do is add in that industry like that. And we're also going to add in the description And what else do we add in? We'll add in primary contacts like that. And we'll pop those in. So now those are all available for us, but they're still not displaying any data. And the reason being is we've got to go into the columns and we give it some metadata. Now in the help file, in the help in Docs, there is a whole section on how all the different properties you can use here. And what you can do is you define a table with a row for each of the columns. So the basic stuff is column name, and I'm going to say, well, that's bind to name like that. And the display name is going to be account like that. And I'm going to say col width, let's give it 200. And I'm going to define this as going to be col row header true. It's kind of like the main cell, and that's really for accessibility purposes. It kind of makes it a little bit bolder as well. But if we run this now, you can see here we've got a set of accounts there. I can scroll down. I can't sort by that. It's already sorted because that's the definition of the view. But if I go into here, I can also define and col sortable true like that. And incidentally, actually, if you go into advanced here, you can just search for these. So you can see if you type col, you can search and you can see all the different properties that you can define inside that collection. So if I search for col sorts, like there it is, sortable, but also I can say things like col resizable. So let's define that as well. Go back into the columns and say col resizable true. I can just simply then copy that and then put in the other elements. So like telephone 1 and telephone, and I don't want that as a row header, so I'll remove that, but I still want to make it sortable like so, and I want to make it resizable, and we don't need it 200. Let's just make that 150. So now there we go, straight away we've got a grid of records. There's other columns that we want to add in here. I'm just going to make this header here a little bit smaller because it's already 75 height. So let's just put that 32. So I can put like a command bar. I can put buttons up there that operate on the selected items in here. So let's just go and add in some more columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste some data in here. You don't want to watch me type that out. It's like that. There are 3 more columns here. So there's industry code, and we've got primary contact ID and then description. So I'll go through what these do. So industry code is a choice. It's a kind of a drop down, and it's no different to any of the other columns. It will display the name of the drop down. It won't show the value, which is quite nice. Primary contact ID is slightly different in that we have to give it a special sort by, because although we're defining it as automatically sortable, the data source requires this slightly different sort column. And that's because just of the nature of the way in which the Dataverse data values come out differently to the actual display text of the primary contact. Because I'm going to display the text of the name of the contact, but when we sort it, we need to say we want to sort it by that name, not the ID. And then lastly, this is an interesting one here. What we've got is this description column here, and what we're defining it as being a multi-line field, and we're also saying that this is going to be a subtext of the name column. So we want to show this as a sort of like a secondary bit of data. So if we look at how that works and run this, you can see here we've now got the primary contact, and I can sort by that. So if we sort down, and we've got the contact details, the telephone and the industry, but we've also got this description that goes underneath. Now, if I wanted to make that top bit a little bit more visible, what I could do is I could say, make that col is bold true. And that just sort of differentiates it a little bit. There we go. And yeah, it's good. Now, if I sort by industry, you can see here I'm sorting by the option set there, and this is automatically being handled. And I think the most important element here is that this is all happening on the server. So this is all delegatable. So we don't have to worry about if this sorting is happening in a delegatable way. That's automatically handled by this data grid. And you can just go and add columns, and you could even make these columns the width of them responsive based on the width of the screen, for example. Now, the other thing is that there is a number of events that we can respond to and a number of properties of the details list that we can use. So if we wanted to perform an action when the user double clicks or uses the return key for keyboard accessibility on a row, we've got the on selects action, but we've also got the selected rows or the selected items that we can use if we wanted to say, for example, show the contacts that are for a particular account. So let's just show that event for the on select. So if I say on select like this, what I can do here is I could put a notify in here, like notify on select. And I could also say, let's put the name of the, let's say self.selected, like name. And we'll see what's it doing here. What's it saying? It's saying, okay, I need to give it a different property. Let's see what we've got here. Is it account name? Yes, it's account name, not just name. Now, when we run this, and if I double click on one of these, you can see here it's displaying the name of the name of that account. And equally, I could use the cursor key. So I'm now navigating around with the cursor keys, and if I press return, it then shows it. So it is actually accessible, and I could also move up, and I can use tab to tab around, and I can use return to sort on the key. So it's a fully accessible grid. And that's actually one of the significant challenges of creating grids using galleries, is making it accessible in this way. Now there's a page size property. And if we come over here, say page, you can see here at the moment it's displaying 150 records. If I go and add in another row here, so a layout, and I'm going to add in a horizontal container like this, and let's just make that a bit bigger. And what that means is that's going to hold our icon. So I'm going to say flexible height. No, we don't want to make that flexible. Let's make it 32. And I'm going to go and grab another code component, which is from the Creator Kit called icon. So that just gives us some of these nice fluent icons that you get. And I'll add that in. I'll add in an icon, and I'm going to make this, going to make it 32 by 32. So it's just kind of a standard icon. And let's give that, let's say that back. So this is going to give us the paging. And again, this is server-side paging. So this is all going to happen on the server, and we don't have to worry about how that works in our PowerFX. And I will also now make that aligned. Apologies that I haven't named any of these things. I really should be naming. So like grid counts like that, make it better. I should be naming all of my icons a little bit nicer. Let's make this expand to the full width like that, and align all of these items here. Let's make it align set by container, and I want to align the items so that they are right aligned. There we go. So it's there. Now, what we can do here is in the event on change, I want to navigate back to the previous page or to the next page. I'm just going to copy this and pop another one in there and make that the next. So forward is the name of the icon. There we go. So we've now got two icons. And actually in the middle, I'm going to pop in a little label as well, just to display the number of pages. So let's make that left, move that left, and let's make that centered like this and give it a bit less width, make it a bit nicer. Now in here, I can just say page. And now this is where I can use some properties of that grid. So grid accounts, page number, and then say of grid accounts total pages. So you can see that there's these properties that I can use to get all of the data I need. And again, this is all sort of server-side delegated values. It's not looking at the total number that's been downloaded on the client. And so in the on-change event of this icon, I'm going to pop a little bit of code. And so what I'm doing here is setting a context variable to this value here, load previous page. And I'm just adding a little sort of random text seed on the end of it to make sure that there's an on-change event that's triggered. Because if I just simply set it to load previous page, and I set it to load previous page again, there's no on-change that's going to be triggered. So it wouldn't actually be sent to the grid. And so I'm going to set this input event here to my grid event like that. Oh, let's put it in as a text. I don't need to do that like that. And so this now means that the input event to this grid will be set to load previous page. And then, again, on the on-change of here, I'm going to set this to say load next page. So if we go and run this, I should be able to move between pages. So there you go. It's now moving between pages. You can see down here it's page 3 or 4. Great. Now, let's say I wanted to go and add in a grid of contacts below here. So at the moment, I've just got one single footer here. And if I select the container, just scroll down a bit. There we go. The main container. I'm going to add in another grid, Fluent details list. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to make it full width like that. And I'm going to make it flexible height. So it kind of consumes a relative amount of the height. And we're going to bind this to in the same way as we did before, the items. We're going to bind this to contacts, but we're not going to bind them to all contacts. We're going to only bind them to the contacts that are for a given account that's selected in the grid up here. So if I go here, paste in a little bit, grid, accounts like that. So here what we're doing is we are filtering all of the contacts and only picking the contacts where the company name equals the selected account in the grid accounts above. Now, notice that there's something strange going on here. We're using this as type, and that's because the company name is actually a polymorphic lookup, and it can refer to both accounts or contacts. And so we're casting effectively. We're telling PowerFX that we want to only use that column where it is an account. Now, if you might want to use if type to just check it's an account or a contact, because this would actually give an error if the parent of that contact was a contact rather than an account. So if type tells you if it's an account or a contact, but I'm just keeping it simple for now. If I run this, okay, we've still not got any contacts because we haven't defined our fields and our columns. So I'm going to paste in a set of columns. So there we've got the columns. Now, if we run this, notice how it's showing me all of the contacts because there's nothing selected up here. I only want to show the ones when you've selected. So we need to put a little bit of logic around this. So we need to say in the items, only give me the contacts where if not is blank. And we're going to use that selected like that. So if that is not blank, then we're going to filter and show some contacts. Otherwise, we won't show any. Now let's run that. So now when I select a particular contact, you can see here, when I select an account, you can see here it's showing me the contacts associated to that. So if I sort by primary contact, you can see here, there we go. Now, this is all great, but maybe I wanted to show like some kind of a little bit extra information, like the credit hold information, and I wanted to highlight that. Well, this is where we can start to use some of the nice other types of cells. And so we're going to now go and add in the fields on the contacts to say, let's add in credit hold. So this is basically a Boolean. So it's just yes or no. And so I can add it into the columns here. And the field name is credit on hold, like this, credit on hold, and credit hold like that. Let's just give it like that. And so if I run that, you can see if I select on here, there we go. We've got two contacts. One has got credit on hold and credit yes and no. I've given it then the wrong name. Let's just correct that. Credit on hold. There we go. So maybe say I wanted to highlight this with a color, depending on if it's yes or no. So cell type, and I'm going to call this tag. So now what this gives us is a slightly different rendering of this yes, no, but it's not actually giving us any color. And the reason being is that what we need to do is we need to find a column that has got the color for that cell type. And I can do that by adding in this additional type of, it's different additional column definition called col tag color column. And I'm going to specify that I want to use the credit tag color column, but of course that doesn't exist. So it's still gray. And the way I can add that in is if I go to records here, I can add in an additional column. So I'm going to say add columns like this. And I'm going to add in my new credit tag color column like this. There we are. And so I need to add in some logic to that to say if the credit on hold is yes, then make it one color, and if it's false, then or no, make it another. So I'm just adding in this little if statement to say if it's credit hold, use this color, which is sort of a red color, and then it's the green color. So now if we run this, we've got what's it saying here? Edit this. It's giving me a little. Okay, I just haven't closed that bracket there to indent that so you can see that a lot better. There we are. Okay, so run this and there we go. We've got the credit on hold, yes, no. And if I select a different one, sort by the primary contact again, like that. And we've got a different, that's always no. So this is the best one, the top one, I think it was, Contoso, iDatum. There we go. Now, the most important thing to understand here is that notice the sort columns it's no longer allowing me to sort. And that's because as soon as I use add columns, okay, if I'm using add columns, then it means that I'm no longer binding directly to the Dataverse table because I'm now using a sort of a local collection. That means all of that kind of server-side delegatable sorting and paging is no longer available to us. So we do have to now manage that ourselves. Now, I have got a video that shows how to do some more complex server-side paging in this scenario, but we would just have to be careful to make sure that we're not going to be bringing back more than the delegatable limit. In the docs for the Creator Kit, there is instructions on how to manage manual sorting, it's called, rather than server-side. There we go. Automatic sorting and manual sorting. And so manual sorting, what we have to do here is we have to respond to a particular sort event, which happens on the column. So we can quite easily take this bit of code here, and if we go back to our app here, and let's define all of our particular on-change event here. There we go. Select that. So what we're doing here is we're saying that if the event is sort, then we're setting a context variable called sort col and also sort ascending to define which column we've just selected on, because this sort event column property will contain the column that I just clicked on. So we've now got the sort col, so we can select that and we can define that in this property here, like that. We also need to define the sort direction as well. And so there's another bit of little code here. We go back here, which is the sort direction. I can copy that directly from there, and I can pop that in there. And if I run this now, if I sort, you can see here that it's actually maintaining the sort. It's giving me the little the little arrow to say which I'm sorting, but it's not actually sorting the data. And the reason being is that we do actually now need to manually handle sorting inside our data set, because now we're just going and getting a data set and creating a collection out of it locally. So I'm going to go and grab a bit of code that will show you how that works. Okay, so go and put this in here. So this is, let's call this, well, we had grid accounts like that. I renamed it. Okay, and so this actually is fairly straightforward when you break it down, even though it looks kind of horrendous. What we're doing is we're doing a switch on that column. Which column are we sorting on? Is it full name, email address, credit on hold? And depending on which column we're sorting on, we're then doing our filter, and then we're actually doing a delegatable sort. Now, it's important that we use this delegatable sort because there is a sort by function which accepts a string rather than just the explicit name of the column. But the problem with that is that means that at runtime and compile time of the app, it doesn't know which columns you're going to use. By doing this approach, it means that Power Apps knows we're going to be sorting on full name, we're going to be sorting on email, we're going to sort on credit hold, rather than it just being a random string. And that means it can do all of its optimization and delegation of those sorts. So now if we run this, if I sort, you can see here it's doing the sort as we'd expect it to. Now there's lots of other kind of ways of using the details list. You know, you can see here we've got some like links that you can embed. You can have tags and custom formats of different columns. You can have images in line. You can see here I've got some SVGs and icons, external images, tag lists, all these kind of things. So it's got lots of flexibility. Obviously, it's not completely as flexible as a gallery would be. You know, gallery, you can do anything with lots of different layouts, whereas the details list, you are only going to be able to have the layouts that are available to you through that column definition collection that you give it. And so it's this trade-off, right? You know, there's always a trade-off, right? You've always got to decide on what is most important to me, having it exactly look the way I want it to, and therefore you're going to use a gallery, and then you will then have to manage all of that layout, all of that sorting, all of that accessibility yourself? Or are you just simply going to be displaying tabular data and these types of cells are going to be sufficient to you? I find that a combination of both is usually what you end up with. And the details list is really proving to make it very, very quick to get some quite nice looking grids with all the functionality that the user would expect, especially if you're going to be embedding custom pages inside model driven apps, because of course the details list looks exactly like you would see everywhere else in your model driven app. Well, I hope you found that useful. In future videos, we're going to be looking at other components in the Creator Kit and how to use those to build your apps. I'm going to put some links in the description to other videos I've done on the details list so you can get more advanced usage, like I mentioned, paging when you're using a local collection. But please do consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and liking this video if you found it helpful. And I'd love to hear from you in the description on if you've used the details list or you're planning to use it. I'd love to hear from you. But until next time, friends, cheers.